I always believed my husband Marcus and I had a strong marriage. Steady, respectful, built on years of quiet trust. We didn't need daily promises or constant words of reassurance. We shared the same morning habits, the same small jokes, even the same silence that comes from knowing someone deeply. There were no jealous scenes, no questions, no doubts. People often said we looked like the kind of couple who had figured life out. And for a long time I believed that too. That morning was just like any other. Marcus showered early, made his black coffee the way he always did, kissed my cheek, and left saying he had an important meeting at the office. He wore his charcoal suit, his favorite one for big days, and drove off in the company car. The sound of the door closing felt ordinary, almost comforting. There was nothing unusual about it, nothing that warned me my life was about to change. Later, while tidying the house, I walked into the garage. Our family SUV stood there covered in dust. The tires hadn't moved in weeks. The windshield was gray with neglect. I thought it would be nice to clean it, maybe surprise him. A small act of care to remind him that I still paid attention to the little things. I opened the doors, took out some cleaning supplies, and began wiping the dashboard. It felt peaceful, like revisiting old memories from happier years. But when I opened the glove compartment, I froze. Between old papers and a pack of gum sat a small box, brand new, unopened. Condoms. A brand we had never used. My heart stopped for a moment. We hadn't used protection in years, not since we tried for a second child that never came. It made no sense. Why would he have them, hidden, untouched, as if waiting for someone else? My hands trembled. The garage felt smaller, the air heavier. It wasn't a scream that came out of me, just silence. A silence so sharp it hurt. I closed the glove compartment with a sudden click, as if shutting it could make everything disappear. But the sound stayed with me. I backed away slowly, staring at the car, trying to convince myself there had to be an innocent reason. There wasn't. Deep down I already knew. That day my world didn't fall apart with a fight or a confession. It cracked quietly right there in the garage between dust and forgotten things. And from that silence something new began to grow inside me. Not tears, not anger, but the cold awareness that nothing would ever be the same again. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Your support helps me share more real-life stories like this one. Now, let's see what Helena does next. That evening, Marcus came home at the usual time. He kissed me on the forehead, told me traffic was terrible, and started talking about a client who kept changing his mind. His voice was calm, casual, like every other night. But I couldn't hear a word. All I saw were his hands, the same hands that had touched that car, that glove compartment, that box. I smiled when he looked at me because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't ask questions. I didn't mention the box. Instead, I served dinner just like always, nodding as he talked. Outside, everything seemed normal. Inside, I was falling apart quietly, one heartbeat at a time. He laughed once during dinner, and I caught myself wondering if she made him laugh the same way. That thought alone made me sick. When he finished eating, he said he had a few emails to send, and disappeared into his study. I just sat there staring at the two plates on the table, one clean, one half finished, and tried to remember what it felt like to trust him. Later that night, I lay beside him in bed. He fell asleep quickly, like people who carry no secrets. I turned my face toward the ceiling and listened to his breathing, wondering how many lies could fit between those breaths. The silence between us felt heavier than any argument could have. Over the next few days, I watched him closely. He started coming home later. There were new shirts, new excuses, new colognes, subtle changes that I might have missed if my eyes weren't already open. He said the office was busier than ever. He said he was working with a new client. And I said nothing. Sometimes silence is more powerful than confrontation. But silence also gives you time. Time to think, to plan, to stop being the person who waits. Every smile he gave me started to look rehearsed. Every text he sent felt shorter, colder. He still kissed my cheek before leaving, but the warmth was gone. It was like hugging a coat someone else had already worn. One afternoon, while folding laundry, I caught sight of the SUV again through the garage window. The memory of that box came rushing back. How my hands had shaken, how my chest had burned. I realized I couldn't live inside that confusion anymore. If he was lying to me, I needed to know for sure. And if he wasn't, well, then the truth wouldn't hurt to uncover. That night, while he slept beside me, I whispered to myself, I won't cry again. Not until I know. Days passed, and my silence became my armor. Marcus still smiled, still talked about work, still kissed my cheek before leaving, but I could see through every gesture now. The man I had trusted for years felt like a stranger wearing my husband's face. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. Instead, I started watching. His messages came later, his explanations shorter. He carried his phone everywhere, even into the bathroom. And when I looked into his eyes, there was always a flicker, guilt trying to hide behind habit. One Friday evening, he called to say he'd be working late. His voice sounded too rehearsed, too careful. When I hung up, the air in the house felt heavy, still waiting. Something inside me finally shifted. I realized I wasn't helpless. I could choose how the truth would unfold. The next day I went for a walk to clear my head. I wandered into a small spice shop near the old bakery, a place filled with warm colors and the smell of pepper and cinnamon. I stood before the shelf of chili peppers, bright red and innocent in their jars. My fingers brushed the label, habanero, extreme heat. And in that moment the idea formed, calm and complete. I didn't need to confront him. I didn't need to scream. I would let his own choices burn him. That evening, when Marcus left for another meeting, I opened the glove compartment again. The box was still there, untouched, waiting. I carried it inside and set it gently on the kitchen counter. I crushed the dried peppers with steady hands, the air filling with their sharp, bitter scent. It stung my eyes, but I didn't blink. The pain felt right, like a reminder that I was still alive. With latex gloves from under the sink, I opened each condom carefully and brushed the fiery powder inside. One by one. Precise, quiet, deliberate. I sealed them again exactly as before, not a single detail out of place. No fingerprints, no trace. When I finished, I placed the box back in the car in the same spot between the papers and gum. The same way I'd found it. Then I stood there for a while looking at it, not with fear, not with guilt, but with the kind of calm that comes when you finally stopped being afraid. That night, I greeted Marcus at the door with a soft smile. I made his favorite dinner. He talked about his late shift, and I nodded as if I believed him. Inside, my heart was still quiet, sure. If he was going to betray me, he wouldn't do it without consequence. The next few days felt strange, too quiet, too predictable. Marcus's excuses became routine, just like everything else in our marriage once was. Late meeting. Last-minute client dinner. Traffic was awful. The same lines, spoken with the same tired smile. But I knew better now. Every lie has a rhythm, and once you hear it, you can't unhear it. One Thursday afternoon, he left home early, saying he had to meet a supplier before heading to the office. He didn't realize I was standing by the kitchen window, watching him adjust his tie in the car mirror like a man preparing for a date. When he drove away, I waited 5 minutes, grabbed my keys and followed. The city moved slowly that morning. Red lights, commuters, the steady hum of ordinary life. It all blurred together. I kept a safe distance, my hands steady on the wheel, my heart racing only when he turned into a part of town we rarely visited. Then I saw it, Sterling Suites Hotel, not too fancy but discreet enough. He parked with confidence, stepped out, and before I could even catch my breath, she appeared. Sabrina. Her blonde hair, her easy laugh. The same woman who had sat at my dinner table, toasted my birthday, and smiled across from me like a friend. I watched her touch his arm as if it belonged to her, watched him smile like he used to smile at me years ago. They walked into the hotel together, not a trace of hesitation between them. I sat there in the car for a long time, the engine humming softly, my fingers gripping the steering wheel. It wasn't surprise that hurt. It was recognition. All the missing pieces suddenly fit. The long nights, the sudden meetings, the new cologne. Everything pointed here. A part of me wanted to run inside, to scream, to demand an explanation. But I didn't move. Because deep down, I knew this was the moment I had been preparing for. I didn't need a confession. I already had proof. I waited until the hotel doors closed behind them. Then I leaned back in my seat, let out a shaky breath, and whispered, "It's all yours now, Marcus." The irony almost made me smile. Because somewhere upstairs, the fire I had prepared was already waiting. Sealed in a box, disguised as pleasure, ready to meet its purpose. When I drove home, I felt no tears, no anger. Only a strange calm. Some people think revenge feels violent. But sometimes it feels like peace. That night I couldn't sleep. The house felt too quiet, too heavy. Marcus hadn't come home and I didn't need to ask why. His lies used to hurt. Now they only confirmed what I already knew. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the clock count every second louder than the last. By morning, his side of the bed was still untouched. I made myself a cup of coffee, though I could barely swallow it. The taste was bitter, but not as bitter as the truth I'd learned to live with. Around noon my phone rang. An unknown number flashed on the screen. Something inside me froze. I answered, my voice calm. Hello. What came next was not calm. A woman's voice, trembling, panicked, almost breaking apart. Helena. It's Sabrina. I didn't know who else to call. Her breath came in sharp gasps between the words. Something's happened. It's Marcus. Please, he's in the hospital. I didn't know what to do. For a moment I said nothing. I just listened to the sound of her fear, raw and unfiltered. Every sob, every breath. She wasn't the confident woman I'd seen laughing outside that hotel. He sounded terrified. I asked quietly, what happened? Her words stumbled over each other. We were together and he started screaming. Said it burned. He thought it was an allergic reaction. I called the ambulance. They said it was something chemical. I don't understand. My hand tightened around the phone. I could almost see the scene in my mind. The chaos, the pain, the panic. And for the first time in a long while I didn't feel small. I felt still. Completely, utterly still. She kept talking, her voice shaking. They're asking what caused it, but he doesn't know. The doctor said it looks like contact with something toxic. I swear I don't know how. I closed my eyes. I didn't need to hear the rest. As I did know. He had found the box. He had used it. And the truth, my truth, had finally reached him. There was silence on the line. Then she whispered, Helena, please. I don't know what to do. I took a slow breath. You'll figure it out, I said softly. Then I hung up. I stood there for a long time, phone still in my hand, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the kitchen. Outside the world was bright, ordinary, peaceful, as if nothing had changed. But inside me, everything had shifted. I didn't laugh. I didn't cry. It wasn't victory I felt, just release. For months I had carried his lies inside me like stones. Now they were gone. By evening the story had already spread. Someone from his office called, pretending not to know the details but dying to ask. Apparently there had been a medical emergency at the hotel. The whispers were already turning into stories, and stories, as I've learned, travel faster than truth ever could. Marcus came home 2 days later, limping, humiliated, silent. He avoided my eyes, said the doctors didn't know what caused the reaction. I nodded politely, pretending to believe him as he once pretended to love me. That night he sat on the edge of the bed, his hands shaking. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Because the man who once hid secrets in glove compartments was now hiding from the consequences of his own choices. Sometimes, life doesn't need your anger to set things right. It just needs your patience. The morning after Marcus came home, the silence between us was unbearable. He avoided my eyes, moved slower than usual, and winced every time he sat down. The proud, confident man I had married looked smaller somehow, like a shadow of himself. He said the doctors were running tests, that it must have been an allergic reaction. He didn't mention the hotel or Sabrina, or the real reason behind his pain. But he didn't have to. We both knew. I watched him pour his coffee with trembling hands, his reflection faintly visible in the kitchen window. There was something almost poetic in it, the way lies eventually start to burn the people who create them. He glanced at me once as if searching for sympathy, but I just smiled politely and turned away. That week everything began to unravel. The story about what happened at the hotel spread like wildfire. People whispered in the office halls, laughed in low voices at lunch tables, and exchanged knowing looks whenever his name was mentioned. It didn't take long before everyone knew the full story. The secret affair, the hospital visit, the humiliation. I didn't need to lift a finger. Life was doing the work for me. A friend from his firm called one afternoon, pretending to ask about his health but really trying to confirm the gossip. She said, "It's everywhere, Helena. They say he and Sabrina were caught together." "I'm so sorry." I thanked her, pretending to be shocked, but inside I felt only calm. There was no satisfaction in it, just the quiet peace that comes when truth finally stops hiding. Within days, Marcus was called into a private meeting with management. I know because he came home that night with his tie loosened, his eyes red, and an envelope in his hand. He said, They think I've embarrassed the company. I didn't respond. What was there to say? Actions have consequences. Sabrina lost her job too. Apparently her husband, Daniel, found out everything and the scandal followed her home. The two of them had built their affair on lies, and now those lies were collapsing like wet paper. I heard she tried to explain, to apologize, but Daniel had already packed her things before she could finish her sentence. There's a certain justice in that kind of silence, not cruel, just final. At home, Marcus barely spoke. He stayed in the living room, scrolling through his phone, trying to erase the comments, the rumors, the jokes. He still wouldn't admit the truth out loud. And I still didn't ask. I didn't need to. Sometimes silence tells the whole story. A few nights later, I found the courage to open our shared bank account. What I saw made my chest tighten. Transactions I didn't recognize. Hotels, gifts, spa reservations, restaurant bills. All the while, I had been cutting corners to pay our bills, believing we were saving for the future. He had been spending our savings on another woman. That night, something inside me broke for the last time. Not from pain but from clarity. I walked to the bathroom mirror, looked at my own reflection and said softly, "You've done enough crying. It's time." The next morning after he left, I gathered everything. The photos, the receipts, the screenshots I had kept quietly since that day in the garage. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I reached out to Daniel Cole, Sabrina's husband. I sent a simple message. "We need to talk. You deserve to know everything." He replied within an hour. We met that evening at a small park not far from downtown. When he saw me, he didn't look angry, just tired, like someone who had also stopped pretending. We sat on a bench, the city lights flickering in the distance, and I told him everything. Not out of revenge, but because honesty was the only thing left that still felt clean. He listened quietly, his eyes on the ground. When I finished, he nodded slowly and said, "Thank you. I think I already knew, but hearing it makes it real." We sat there for a long time without speaking, two strangers bound by the same wound. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't feel alone. That night when I got home, Marcus was waiting in the kitchen. He looked at me like a man who had seen his world burn and didn't know what to say. He muttered, "I made a mistake, Helena. Please. I'll fix it." I looked at him, really looked, and realized there was nothing left to fix. He had built his destruction piece by piece, and now he was standing in the ruins asking me to pretend we still had a home. I simply said, "No, Marcus. I'm done." Then I walked past him the same way he had walked past me 100 times before. Except this time I didn't stop. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe and tell me where you're watching from in the comments. In the final part, you'll see how Helena finds her peace, and what it truly means to start over after betrayal. The day I filed for divorce, the sky was gray but peaceful. I didn't cry and I didn't look back. I had already mourned this marriage in silence long before I signed the papers. Marcus tried to apologize again, promising to change, promising to rebuild. But you can't rebuild something that no longer has a foundation. Some things once broken are not meant to be repaired. When the final documents arrived, I placed them neatly on the dining table, the same table where he once told me about his dreams. This time I sat alone. It didn't feel empty, it felt free. I moved into a small apartment a few weeks later. No luxury, no memories, just space. Space to breathe, to think, to sleep without pretending. At first, the silence was strange. I had grown used to listening for footsteps, keys, the sound of a car door closing. But eventually that quiet became my favorite sound. People in the neighborhood whispered about the divorce. Some offered sympathy, others curiosity disguised as kindness. I smiled at both, knowing I didn't owe anyone my story. Let them talk, they always do. The difference now was that their words no longer had power over me. One evening I received a message. It was from Daniel. He simply wrote, "How are you holding up?" I stared at the screen for a long time before replying, "Better than before." We started talking from time to time, not about the past but about small, simple things. Books, work, our kids, the quiet hours that come after heartbreak. There was no rush, no pressure, just two people learning how to exist again. Weeks turned into months. We met for coffee one afternoon, just as friends, we said. But something in his calmness felt familiar, safe. We didn't talk about Marcus or Sabrina. We talked about starting over, about how pain can teach you who you really are. And when we said goodbye, his smile stayed with me all the way home. Healing doesn't come in one big moment. It arrives slowly, in small breaths, quiet mornings, and the courage to laugh again without guilt. I started reading more, cooking for myself, taking walks at sunset. I learned that being alone isn't the same as being lonely. It's the space where you finally meet yourself again. Months later, Daniel and I crossed paths at a school event. We talked for hours, about everything and nothing. When he reached for my hand, I didn't pull away. There was no rush of drama, no fireworks, just a quiet warmth that felt honest. For the first time, love didn't scare me. We never tried to label what we had. We didn't need to. It wasn't about replacing what we lost. It was about understanding what we truly deserved. A love that didn't need lies to survive. Now, when I think about Marcus, I don't feel hate. I feel distance. Like remembering someone from a story that isn't yours anymore. The anger is gone, replaced by gratitude, because without that pain I would have never found my peace. I didn't win by destroying him. I won by choosing myself. By letting go, by rebuilding, by smiling again. Sometimes life doesn't give you closure. It gives you a beginning. And mine started the day I stopped being afraid of silence. Before you go, tell me in the comments. Have you ever had to start over when you thought everything was lost? I'd love to know your story.